There's a lie that almost every man learns early on without realizing it. They say that to be respected, he needs to explain himself. He needs to show his intentions. He needs to say what he feels. He needs to prove who he is. He needs to convince others of his worth. And the more he tries to do this, the stranger the result becomes, because in practice, people seem to respect precisely those who reveal the least. Have you noticed that? The man who talks too much is usually ignored. The man who over-explains is usually questioned. The man who constantly seeks approval ends up conveying weakness without realizing it. Meanwhile, there is another type of man who enters a room and immediately draws attention without raising his voice, without trying to impress anyone, and without chasing after recognition. He's not the most handsome. He's not the richest. He's not the most charismatic. But there is something about him that is unsettling, intriguing, and attractive all at the same time. People can't figure it out, and what they cannot decipher ends up occupying space within their minds. What almost no one realizes is that influence has never been just about presence. Often it is born from absence. It has never been just about speaking. Often it is born from silence. It has never been just about acting. Often it is born from the ability to wait. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. While most men were slaves to their own emotions, their own impulses, and the constant need for validation, a select few learned a rare skill, controlling what they revealed to the world. And this skill changes everything, because the moment a man becomes impossible to read is the moment he ceases to be predictable. And when it ceases to be predictable, it also ceases to be easily controlled. In this video, you'll discover why people give away power without realizing it, how ego silently destroys influence, and what psychological principles transform an ordinary person into someone who commands respect even before opening their mouth. Most people will never learn this because she's too busy trying to be understood. But those who learn what you are about to hear will begin to see human behavior in a way that can never again be ignored. If something inside you awakened while listening, don't ignore that feeling. This channel isn't about videos, it's about memories. Remember who you were before the fear, before the exhaustion, before the silence. Each new video here is a different reflection of your own soul, an invitation to understand what the world never taught you. The power you seek outside has always been within you. If you feel that this journey speaks to what lives silently within you, sign up now. Not to follow yet another creator, but to reconnect with something the world tried to make you forget. Because here, every word was made to heal, each reflection to awaken, and each video serves as a reminder. You are not alone on the path back to yourself. Click on subscribe and turn the algorithm into a daily reminder of who you really are. There's a silent difference between those who occupy space and those who try to conquer it. Most people believe that power is associated with speed, immediate response, and constant movement. But just observe the individuals who truly wield influence to notice something curious. They rarely seem to be rushing. While others hurry to respond to messages, justify decisions, and prove their worth, they speak slowly, walk slowly, and make decisions without conveying urgency. Not because they are slow, but because they understand a truth that Machiavelli observed centuries ago. Whoever controls the pace often controls the game. Politics, guided by reality, not ideals, shows that human beings interpret signals even before analyzing facts. And one of the most powerful signals is the absence of haste. When someone demonstrates excessive urgency, they convey the feeling that they need something. When they demonstrate calmness, they convey the feeling that they are choosing, and whoever chooses usually occupies the position of greatest power. That's why so many leaders, negotiators, and strategists have learned to slow down externally, even when they are thinking at 1,000 miles an hour internally. They understood that excessive speed usually reveals anxiety, while serenity suggests control. Imagine a business meeting. A difficult proposal is placed on the table and everyone awaits a response. Most feel an almost automatic impulse to respond quickly to appear intelligent or prepared. However, the experienced strategist does something different. They remain silent for a few seconds. They analyze, they observe the reactions, they ask a question before answering. This simple behavior completely changes the perception of those around them. Silence creates weight. The pause creates authority. The response ceases to seem impulsive and begins to seem like the result of reflection. This logic appears in practically all areas of life, in family discussions, job interviews, relationships, and negotiations. The principle of better to be feared than loved refers not only to direct force, but also to the ability to not become predictable. Those who react instantly surrender their emotions on a silver platter. Those who control the timing of their reaction maintain their strategic position. It is no coincidence that great military leaders used the calculated use of force. Before acting, they observed. Before responding, they evaluated. Before attacking, they studied. The apparent slowness often hid enormous mental speed. Interestingly, the modern world rewards agitation and punishes reflection. Social networks train people to respond immediately. Apps create the illusion that everything needs to happen now, but real human nature remains exactly the same. Decisions based on real human nature show that those who seem desperate for attention lose value in the eyes of others. Those who demonstrate tranquility arouse curiosity. Therefore, constant adaptability requires learning to slow down when everyone else is speeding up. It's not about slurring your words or acting like a statue. It's about eliminating unnecessary movements, fewer justifications, fewer impulses, less reactivity. In many situations, the person who responds later is the one who ends up being listened to the most. And when someone learns to control their own pace, they begin to realize something even deeper. The real challenge is not containing the body's movements. It's controlling what happens inside, because there is a huge difference between feeling a storm and allowing it to overflow into the world. And that's precisely where the next layer of the strategy begins to emerge. One of the biggest misconceptions people have when they begin to study power, influence, and self-control is believing that mastering emotions means feeling nothing. Nothing could be further from the truth. The most strategically dangerous individuals are not cold because they don't feel. They are cold because they feel deeply and yet consciously choose what to reveal. Machiavelli understood that the appearance of virtue often has more political value than genuine emotion displayed unfiltered. This doesn't mean falsehood, it means discernment. The man who demonstrates everything he feels becomes predictable. The man who understands his emotions but decides when to use them becomes difficult to interpret. And that which is difficult to interpret can rarely be easily manipulated. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, teaches that the world doesn't necessarily reward the most sincere, but often rewards those who know how to manage information. And emotions are information. When someone immediately reveals every thought, every insecurity, and every reaction, they are offering a complete map of their own mind to any attentive observer. The strategist does differently. He observes first. He understands later. It expresses only what serves the greater purpose. This is evident in relationships. Imagine someone receiving a message that deeply disturbs them. The immediate impulse is to respond with the same intensity, to defend themselves, to attack, to explain, to justify. However, strategic restraint works differently. Instead of reacting in the heat of the moment, the person allows the emotion to exist without automatically transforming it into action. They feel the irritation, they acknowledge the frustration, they perceive the disappointment, but they don't unleash these emotions on the world without first deciding whether this will produce a useful result. This is precisely where many people confuse restraint with suppression. Suppression is pretending nothing happened. It's pushing everything inside until the pressure explodes later. Restraint is different. Restraint is looking at the emotion without becoming a slave to it. It's like a commander who possesses his own loyal armies. The soldiers exist, the force exists, the destructive potential exists, but they are not sent to the battlefield at every little provocation. The calculated use of force requires carefully choosing when to act and when to remain still. And this choice almost always separates amateurs from strategists. Most unnecessary conflicts arise because people confuse authenticity with impulsiveness. They say everything they think, the moment they think it, to anyone in front of them. Then they are surprised by the consequences. The individual who develops virtù and fortuna learns something different. They understand that every emotion carries energy, and energy can be wasted or directed. An offensive comment can turn into a pointless argument or an opportunity to understand who is really in front of them. Criticism can generate an emotional reaction or provide valuable information about the environment. True power lies not in not feeling. It lies in deciding the fate of what has been felt, and the more someone develops this skill, the more they realize that certain emotions possess enormous strategic potential when used correctly. Especially those that most people completely lose control of when experiencing them. Among all of them, there is one that has built empires, destroyed careers, started wars, and changed entire destinies. An emotion that almost everyone believes they control, but which often ends up controlling the one who possesses it. Most people see anger as a weakness, and in most cases, they are right. Uncontrolled anger turns intelligent men into emotional puppets. It causes them to reveal intentions, expose vulnerabilities, and destroy in minutes what took years to build. But there is a huge difference between being dominated by anger and mastering anger. Machiavelli observed that power rarely belongs to those who react impulsively. It belongs to those who understand when to demonstrate strength, when to demonstrate calm, and when to create a specific impression on the minds of others. The calculated use of force doesn't only happen in battles or political disputes. It happens daily in conversations, negotiations, and the silent confrontations of everyday life. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, shows that some situations demand visible firmness. The problem is that most people explode because they have lost control. The strategist, on the other hand, may appear to have lost control when, in fact, they are guiding every move. There is a brutal difference between a genuine emotional outburst and a carefully managed display of discontent. One is born from impulsiveness. The other is born from intention. Observe respected leaders in organizations, companies, or sports teams. They don't always remain calm. At certain times, they raise their voices. They demonstrate dissatisfaction. They show firmness. But there's an important detail. These manifestations have direction. They don't happen because emotion has taken the wheel. They happen because the message needs to have an impact. Imagine a manager who notices a serious drop in team commitment. If he responds with permanent indifference, he may convey weakness. If he responds with uncontrolled fury, he may generate unproductive fear. However, when he demonstrates dissatisfaction precisely, clearly stating the problem and its consequences, he creates a different effect. This is where many superficially interpret the phrase, better to be feared than loved. Machiavelli never defended irrational tyranny. He defended the ability to command respect without crossing the line into hatred. After all, avoiding being hated remains a fundamental rule. Strategic anger doesn't destroy bridges unnecessarily. It creates boundaries. It establishes territory. It communicates that certain lines cannot be crossed without consequences. And precisely because it is rare, it has value. The curious thing is that true strength lies not in displaying anger. It lies in the ability to switch it off immediately after it has served its purpose. The man dominated by ego continues to fuel conflict for days, weeks, or months. The strategist does not. He uses emotion as a tool and then puts it away again. Just as a commander does not keep his own loyal armies in permanent combat, he does not keep his mind trapped in a constant state of war. This skill requires virtù and fortuna because it involves something that few develop, conscious control over one's own impulses. And the more one masters this art, the more one realizes that presence does not always generate influence. In some cases, the most powerful impact does not happen when entering a room. It happens when leaving it. Because there is a kind of silence that speaks louder than any speech. There is a kind of distance that produces more effect than any direct confrontation. And those who understand this discover one of the most underestimated psychological weapons that exist. There's a truth about the human mind that few people understand. That which is constantly available loses some of its perceived value. Not because it's of lesser quality, but because excessive familiarity reduces its impact. Machiavelli deeply understood this principle when observing kings, generals, and political leaders. The most influential rulers weren't accessible all the time. There were moments of presence and moments of distance. There were encounters and there was silence. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, shows that human beings attribute importance to what they don't completely control. When someone is always present, always responding, always explaining, and always available, they leave little room for imagination. However, when this presence disappears naturally and strategically, something interesting happens. Other people's minds begin to fill in the empty spaces, and often they do so much more intensely than any explanation could produce. Silence creates questions. Absence creates curiosity, and curiosity creates attention. Not because manipulation exists, but because this is a deeply ingrained characteristic in human nature. Think about how many times someone has been mentally stuck in a situation precisely because they didn't receive all the answers. A friend who distanced themselves, a partner who changed their behavior, a leader who stopped talking for a period, a professional who refused to participate in every available conversation. In many cases, absence has a greater impact than constant presence. This is because the human mind has difficulty dealing with gaps. It seeks patterns, it seeks explanations, it seeks closure, and when it doesn't find them immediately, it continues working behind the scenes. This is why, strategically, strong individuals don't feel the need to justify every move. They understand that over-explaining often reduces their influence. The appearance of virtue depends not only on what is shown, but also on what is chosen not to show. The mistake many people make is believing they need to respond instantly, clarify everything, and remove any doubt. However, in practice, this often eliminates mystery, reduces the perception of value, and freely gives away something that could strengthen their position. Constant adaptability requires knowing when to advance and when to simply step away for a moment. This doesn't mean disappearing as a childish form of punishment or emotional manipulation. It means understanding the strategic value of one's own energy, time, and attention. Those who are constantly trying to prove their importance usually convey neediness. Those who understand their own worth don't need to announce their absence. They simply go their own way when necessary. The principle of decisions based on real human nature shows that confident people don't live chasing validation. They know that attention is a scarce resource, and that's precisely why they use it carefully. Interestingly, many of the most influential men in history built their authority not only on what they said, but also on the moments when they chose to say nothing. And it is at this point that an even deeper discovery emerges. Because absence creates questions, but there is something that keeps a person mentally trapped for much longer than any temporary disappearance. Something that continues to occupy space in the mind for weeks, months, or even years. Something that most try to solve immediately without realizing that they are giving the adversary exactly what they need to move forward. Most people believe that winning a conflict means having the last word. They believe they need to respond, clarify, prove they are right, and end the discussion with a final statement that leaves everything perfectly resolved. It seems logical, it seems fair, but reality rarely works that way. Machiavelli observed that human behavior is driven much more by perception than by pure logic, and one of the greatest psychological forces that exists is born precisely from what remains incomplete. The human mind has an almost obsessive need to close cycles. When something ends clearly, it files the matter away and moves on. However, when something remains open, without a definitive answer, without a full explanation, and without complete resolution, it continues to occupy mental space. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, shows that silence often generates more psychological wear and tear than discussion. Those who try to resolve everything immediately often give the other person exactly what they are looking for: relief. And emotional relief is a silent form of liberation. Think about how many times someone has spent days reflecting on a conversation that was never concluded, a message that went unanswered, a question that remained unanswered, a conflict that ended without a declared winner. Most people have experienced something similar, and that's precisely why they should understand the power of this mechanism. When someone receives all the answers, their mind rests. When they don't, it continues working. That's why experienced strategists rarely engage in battles to prove emotional superiority. They understand that not every confrontation deserves an explicit conclusion. Often responding less is more effective than responding a lot. The principle of avoid being hated remains important here. It's not about creating unnecessary resentment or fueling endless wars. It's about understanding that it's not always smart to freely give the opponent the sense of closure they seek. In certain situations, the absence of reaction communicates more strength than any carefully constructed argument. And curiously, the more someone tries to convince others, the less influence they usually possess. The real problem is that the ego hates leaving things unresolved. It craves recognition. It craves validation. It wants to be seen as a winner. It wants to hear that it was right. It wants approval. It wants the last word. And that's exactly why so many people sabotage their own strategic position without realizing it. They confuse momentary emotional satisfaction with long-term results. Virtù and fortuna require a rare ability to endure the discomfort of not concluding everything immediately, to endure the urge to respond, to endure the desire to explain, to endure the need to win every dispute. Because there is a gigantic difference between achieving a small emotional victory and preserving a position of strength. And those who learn this difference begin to perceive another, even more uncomfortable truth. The most powerful influence does not belong to those who desperately need something. It belongs to those who desire it, but can live perfectly well without it. And this distinction completely changes how others perceive, value, and respond to your presence. There is an invisible energy that people perceive even when no one speaks a single word. It appears in negotiations, relationships, friendships, job interviews, and practically any human interaction. It's the difference between wanting something and desperately needing it. Machiavelli understood that excessive dependence almost always weakens the position of the person who possesses it. This happens because need alters behavior. It makes a person accept conditions they would normally refuse. It makes them tolerate disrespect they wouldn't normally tolerate. It makes them surrender power in exchange for immediate relief. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, teaches that human beings possess an impressive capacity to detect emotional, financial, or social needs. Even when no one admits it verbally, the signs appear. In body language, in tone of voice, in the speed of responses, in the difficulty of saying no, in the anxiety for approval. And the more someone demonstrates needing something to feel complete, the more they reduce their perceived value in the eyes of others. Not because people are bad, but because human nature tends to respect those who seem capable of walking alone. Consider a simple example. Two professionals are participating in an interview. Both possess similar skills. The first conveys the feeling that he desperately needs that opportunity. He accepts any condition. He demonstrates anxiety in every sentence. The second desires the position, but makes it clear through his posture that his identity does not depend on that approval. He wants it, but he doesn't need it. Curiously, this difference completely changes the dynamics of the conversation. The first seems to be asking permission to be valued. The second conveys the feeling that he already recognizes his own worth even before receiving any external validation. The same principle appears in relationships. Emotionally dependent people often push away exactly what they want to attract. The more they try to hold on, the more pressure they exert. The more pressure they exert, the more resistance they generate. This is where the phrase, "better to be feared than loved," is often misinterpreted. The true strategic meaning is not in intimidating others. It is in developing such a solid presence that your happiness does not depend exclusively on their approval. Those who are excessively dependent become predictable. Those who possess autonomy become magnetic. This doesn't mean abandoning ambitions or feigning indifference to life. On the contrary, it means desiring intensely without turning desire into a prison. It means building your own loyal armies within your own mind. Internal resources that allow you to keep moving forward even when things don't go as expected. The strategically strong man wants to grow, wants to conquer, wants to win, and wants to prosper. But he doesn't sacrifice his dignity to achieve these goals. He understands that virtue and fortuna favor those who maintain their stability even amidst uncertainty. And that's precisely why he becomes harder to manipulate, because those who don't desperately need to can negotiate better. They can wait longer. They can choose more clearly. They can abandon bad opportunities without panicking. However, there is a silent obstacle that often destroys this freedom. An enemy that makes intelligent people trade effectiveness for validation. An adversary that convinces men to fight useless battles just to prove they were right. And this adversary isn't outside. It lives within each of us. Few traps are as dangerous as the need to be right. It seems like a virtue, but it often functions as a prison. Everyone knows someone who wins arguments and loses opportunities, who manages to prove a point but destroys relationships in the process, who leaves a debate with the right answer and a negotiation without a result. Machiavelli observed something that most people still ignore. The world rarely rewards those who are right. It rewards those who produce favorable consequences. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, requires abandoning many comfortable illusions. One of them is believing that truth by itself always wins. In practice, those who achieve results learn to ask a different question. Instead of asking, "Am I right?" they ask, "Does this bring me closer to or further away from my goal?" It seems like a small change, but it completely transforms the way someone makes decisions, because the ego seeks recognition. Strategy, on the other hand, seeks effectiveness, and these two forces rarely walk together for very long. The more the ego grows, the harder it becomes to see reality as it really is. Imagine a businessman receiving harsh criticism about his business. His pride immediately finds dozens of arguments to defend himself. After all, he knows the market. He has experience. He worked on that project for years. But a strategist does something different. Before reacting, he asks himself if there is any useful information hidden in that criticism. Not because he agrees with everything, not because he is weak, but because he understands that usefulness is worth more than emotional validation. The same happens in relationships. How many arguments could end in a few minutes if people stopped trying to win and started trying to solve problems? How many friendships would be preserved? How many opportunities would arise? The principle of decisions based on real human nature shows that most people don't seek understanding. They seek confirmation. They seek applause for what they already believe. However, those who want to grow need to develop the ability to sacrifice pride in exchange for clarity. And this requires a strength that few possess, because fighting an external adversary is easy. What's difficult is contradicting one's own need to be right. This is precisely why virtù and fortuna appear repeatedly in the history of great strategists. They understood that flexibility is often worth more than pride. Constant adaptability doesn't mean changing your mind for convenience. It means changing when the facts demand change. It means abandoning a strategy that doesn't work even after investing time in it. It means recognizing mistakes before they turn into disasters. The ego-driven man interprets corrections as personal attacks. The effectiveness-driven man interprets corrections as valuable information. And this difference creates completely distinct destinies over the years. Interestingly, the more someone learns to abandon the need to be right, the more results they begin to achieve. But there is an even deeper layer to this process, because the ego not only creates unnecessary arguments, it possesses a much more destructive ability. It constantly whispers in a person's ear, demanding recognition, attention, applause, and the last word. And when no one notices this inner voice, it transforms into the most efficient saboteur there is. Most people spend their entire lives looking for enemies in the wrong places. They blame competitors, circumstances, family, governments, economic crises, lack of opportunities, and even bad luck for their own results. All of this can undoubtedly create real difficulties. But there is a much closer, much more persistent, and infinitely more dangerous adversary. It wakes up with the person every day. It knows their fears, their insecurities, and their deepest desires. And precisely for that reason, it knows exactly where to attack. Machiavelli understood that no ruler loses a kingdom solely because of external enemies. Often, the downfall begins within their own walls. The same happens in personal life. The ego rarely presents itself as a saboteur. On the contrary, it usually appears disguised as justice, dignity, pride, or self-esteem. It convinces the person that they need to respond to that provocation. It convinces them that they need to prove their worth. It convinces them that they need to be recognized. Politics, guided by reality, not by ideals, reveals something uncomfortable. A good part of the battles that people fight produce no result beyond the momentary satisfaction of their own pride. And pride, when constantly nurtured, transforms into vulnerability. Observe the behavior of someone who cannot bear to be ignored. Any sign of rejection triggers an immediate need for reaction. If they don't receive attention, they try to attract attention. If they don't receive recognition, they try to show off their achievements. If they don't receive approval, they try to convince others of their own worth. The problem is that this need surrenders emotional control to external factors. The person becomes dependent on the reactions of others to feel stable, and those who depend on validation inevitably become manipulable. The principle of better to be feared than loved often hides a deeper lesson. True power doesn't arise when everyone admires someone. It arises when that person manages to keep moving forward even without applause. Many men miss extraordinary opportunities because they can't bear to appear small for a period. They want recognition before results. They want respect before building something. They want visibility before competence. And the ego encourages all of this. It hates silent processes. It hates invisible growth. It hates the anonymity necessary to build something great. It wants immediate rewards. It wants constant confirmation. It wants the last word in every conversation. That's precisely why the most dangerous strategists learn to work in the dark. They don't depend on audience approval to keep moving forward. They develop their own loyal armies within themselves. They build discipline when no one is watching. They study when no one applauds. They evolve when no one recognizes them. Virtù and fortuna favor those who can remain focused even without instant rewards, because the reality is simple. The world rarely delivers extraordinary results to those who need to be constantly reminded that they are on the right track. Constant adaptability requires enough maturity to abandon the need for approval and embrace responsibility for one's own path. And when someone finally begins to win this internal battle, something extraordinary happens. For the first time, they stop living by reacting to the world's movements. They cease to be a piece being moved by circumstances, emotions, and the expectations of others. And they begin to see a completely different possibility. The possibility of designing their own chessboard, defining their own rules, and deliberately building the reality they wish to inhabit. There comes a moment in every man's life when he realizes an uncomfortable truth. For years, he believed he was making decisions, when in reality, he was only reacting. He reacted to the opinions of others. He reacted to crises. He reacted to fears. He reacted to opportunities that appeared by chance. He reacted to circumstances like a leaf carried by the wind. And while reacting, he called it living. Machiavelli understood something that few understand even today. The most influential men in history did not merely respond to the world. They began to shape it. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, begins precisely at this point. When someone abandons the passive posture of spectator and assumes the responsibility of architect of their own trajectory. Most people wake up thinking about the problems they need to solve. The architect wakes up thinking about the reality they want to build. It seems like a subtle difference, but it completely alters the direction of life, because those who only put out fires never find time to build an empire. And those who spend years reacting to circumstances end up becoming a product of them. Observe the routine of most people. Cell phones define their mood. News defines their emotional state. The opinions of others define their self-esteem. The market defines their confidence. The environment defines their productivity. Everything comes from the outside in. The strategically strong person takes the opposite path. They first decide who they want to become and then organize their life around that decision. They don't wait for motivation to act. They don't wait for approval to begin. They don't wait for perfect conditions to move forward. Virtù and fortuna go hand in hand precisely because luck usually favors those who are already in motion when the opportunity arises. Think of someone who wants to prosper financially. Most spend years consuming content about wealth without building anything. The architect chooses a direction and begins to execute. They may study sales, they may develop a valuable skill, they may learn negotiation, they may build a business, they may invest. The important thing is not the initial speed. The important thing is to abandon emotional dependence on circumstances. Because decisions based on real human nature show that extraordinary people don't have fewer problems. They have simply developed the ability to act despite them. When this level of awareness begins to emerge, many of the previous lessons finally connect. Slowness ceases to be merely calmness and becomes mastery. Restraint ceases to be silence and becomes a choice. Anger ceases to be an impulse and becomes a tool. Absence ceases to be escape and becomes a stance. Detachment ceases to be indifference and becomes freedom. The death of the ego ceases to be sacrifice and becomes efficiency. Everything converges on a single principle: regaining control over what can be controlled and ceasing to waste energy trying to govern what is beyond reach. The calculated use of force does not mean dominating others. It means dominating oneself. One's own loyal armies do not simply mean external allies. They mean discipline, clarity, patience, and self-control. And perhaps this is the greatest lesson Machiavelli left for those who truly understand his work. The powerful man is not the one who manages to control everyone around him. It is the one who has become so self-aware that he has ceased to be controlled by them. Now, stop for a moment and ask yourself an honest question. How many decisions in your life were truly your own? And how many of those were simply reactions to pressures, expectations, provocations, and emotional needs that you never learned to control? Most men spend decades believing they are in control, when in reality they are being driven by their own impulses. They rush to respond. They rush to justify themselves. They rush to prove their worth. They rush to win arguments that change absolutely nothing. But have you ever noticed that the strongest men are rarely running? They don't need to, because they understood something that most people will never understand. Power is not about controlling others. Power is not being controlled. Not being controlled by the need for approval, not being controlled by anger, not being controlled by fear, not being controlled by the ego, not being controlled by the opinions of those who aren't even building their own lives. Throughout this video, you've seen that true influence is born when a man masters himself, when he learns to control his pace, when he carefully chooses his battles, when he stops seeking validation and begins to build value, when he stops reacting to the world and assumes the position of architect of his own reality. But knowledge without action is merely entertainment. Therefore, the most important question is not what you learn today. The question is, what will change in you after this video? What was the lesson that impacted you the most? Was slowness the dominant trait? Was it a strategic absence? Was it the death of the ego? Or was it realizing that perhaps the greatest enemy had always been within their own mind? Write your answer in the comments. I want to know which of these principles you intend to apply first and which one was the most difficult to accept. And if you've made it this far, take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because the next videos will be for men who have decided to abandon naivete, see reality as it truly is, and develop a strength that doesn't depend on applause, approval, or recognition. See you in the next video.